In this video, I'm going to be making some monsters for my very first RPG zine, Dragontown. Alright, so I've been writing away on Dragontown, figuring out all the details, getting stuff ready, trying to make some fun quests that players can get into a little bit of trouble with, and that has led me to needing to design a new monster, and I think I've come up with something pretty fun. So because this is a low-level sort of starting adventure, and because this is a fantasy world called Dragontown, there needs to be something like goblins. But we've all fought so many goblins, I want it to be something a little bit different. So I have come up with a creature called a Goatlin. So they're like goblins, but they're goats. So I'm going to jump over into the computer, draw some Goatlins, and tell you a little bit about my ideas of how they work. Okay, so when I am planning out monsters, I like to take a step back and think about how I want the encounter to go before I start getting into any stats or anything like that. So the story for this encounter is that the dragon of Dragontown is missing, and one of the apple farmers' farms has been ransacked by these Goatlins. And usually the farmer would go to the dragon and say, "Hey, there's Goatlins everywhere, I need your help, dude." The dragon's not there anymore, so now it is up to the players to deal with the nuisance that is Goatlins. Help the farmer out, scare him away, kill them, learn a little bit about what's going on in this world. Perfect first quest. So then I start thinking about what is the personality of a Goatlin, right? So goats are typically curious creatures, so I like the idea that they're always climbing on stuff and getting into places that they shouldn't be. I wrote down that they're ravenous, which works for the idea of them ransacking this farm. They're just going to gorge themselves on these magical apples. And then the other thing we all know about goats is that they're super loud. They like to scream and be weird. So maybe that translates into them, what's it called? They like bleat. I think that's the word, bleat. They make that loud goat scream whenever they see something that isn't right, something that is scary to them. Like if they saw the dragon of Dragontown, they'd all go nuts and start screaming. I like the idea that they are goblin-like, so they're a herd of Goatlins. The actual encounter, it's a lot of little dudes that always outnumber the players. And maybe the twist on that goblin archetype is that the Goatlins are a little hardier than goblins, but maybe they're not as nimble, so they're easier to hit. So that's going to translate into the Goatlins having more HP than a typical goblin, but maybe a lower armor class. Okay, now we start getting into their actual abilities. So first things first, a Goatlin has to have a headbutt ability. So I think I would write something like, if the Goatlin charges into melee with another character, it can headbutt and do a little bit more damage than it normally would. It might also be fun if they had like a kick ability. So something like if the Goatlin is flanked from behind, it can use its reaction to take a little kick at the enemy and do a point of damage. And so I want these Goatlins to be a little more humanoid than goats. So they speak common and stuff like that. But they should be carrying weapons. So they probably get like a club, just something that does like 1d4 of damage. Okay, so now that I have the Goatlins all figured out in terms of their personality and their abilities, now I gotta start assigning stats. And this is where things get a little tricky for the Dragontown zine, because I want the stats to be 5e compatible, but also work for OSR stuff. I'm super familiar with how 5e stats work, but I'm much less familiar with OSR. So I called up my friend Scott. He explained how hit dice work and all of the old school stuff. So I think I figured out a good way to present it. And honestly, it's basically how Andrew Kolb has presented stat blocks for all the amazing monsters in this Neverland book. Super simple, really elegant, makes a lot of sense for 5e stuff, and easy to use in the OSR stuff. So I think I'm just going to rip him off and make this Goatlin stat block look like something from this book. Okay, so super low level monster gets just 1 hit dice. That's going to translate into 6 HP, and I think I'm going to give these dudes an armor class of 10, which is like unarmored. So this actually makes them much weaker than a 5e goblin. And what I really love about that Neverland book is that it presents 3 numbers for saves. So I'm giving these Goatlins a +1, a 0, and a -1 save. And basically, it's like, if you're the DM and you look at that stat block, you can just make a snap judgment call of which of those 3 saves you want to use. So, you know, if the Goatlin has to make a Constitution saving throw, maybe it gets a +1 bonus. If it has to make a Charisma saving throw for some reason, it's probably a -1 bonus. And honestly, these Goatlins are quite a bit weaker than a 5e goblin, but I think that's okay because they might be quite a bit stronger than like an OSR goblin. So really all that is to say that stats kind of don't matter. If you feel like you need to change them based on whatever game you're playing, I say go for it. All right, now that we've figured out stats, the last thing to do is make a boss version of a Goatlin. So you can imagine it. This herd of Goatlins has a leader. His name is Hornhead Bossbeard, and he's just a bigger version of the other Goatlins. So maybe his HP is way bumped up. He's got 12 HP and a couple of extra abilities. So I was thinking it'd be fun if Bossbeard had like a chomp ability, so he could actually bite down on the weapons that the players are using. And you have to roll a strength save or he yanks it out of your hand. And maybe if the DM rolls a 20 on that attack, Bossbeard yanks the weapon out of your hand and breaks it. That might be a little bit too mean for such a low-level creature, but interesting idea. And the other ability that I thought would be a cool play on the fact that these Goatlins are so much like goblins, but goats. So Bossbeard could have a sort of morale boost ability like a goblin boss, but Hornhead Bossbeard's morale boost doesn't actually do anything. So you can imagine this boss Goatlin making a rousing goat scream to energize his herd, but the indifference of the other Goatlins wins out and it doesn't really give any benefit. I don't know, maybe that's super silly, but I think it gives a little bit of flavor to the encounter and maybe gives you the idea that this Goatlin boss isn't actually the boss, he's just a bigger version of the other Goatlins. So yeah, there they are, the Goatlins. This is probably the first enemy encounter you would have from the Dragontown zine. This is really the kind of stuff I love. So, you know, the story influences the game mechanics influence the story. It all works together. And you get these fun little creatures that you can scare away from this farm and start to help save this Dragontown. Alright, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you've made it this far, I super appreciate you. Let me know what you think of the Goatlins down in the comments. I hope this video was instructional in an entertaining way and gets you excited to create your own monsters for your tabletop game. If you want to learn more about the Dragontown zine, stay tuned, hit the subscribe button, and ring the notification bell so you're alerted when new videos about the zine go up. I'm working super hard on it, got a lot of fun things planned. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!